Hello, besties. So, yesterday, I cut me talking about the Night Fire. That's what I read yesterday. I read The Night Fire by Michael Connelly. This was another Ballard and Bosch adventure. And to be honest with you, both Bosch and Ballard had a lot of side little quests that they were going on. As we previously discussed, Ballard is still employed. She has a job. She is pulling. She has to go to work and clock in, clock out. And some of the cases she had to clock in and clock out for were like a little bit crazy. Not even a little bit. They were like very crazy. There was a whole scene in this book where she had to go and do like this welfare check on one of like the board of commissioners' family members or some shit. And that led to finding out that this man had been dismembered. Craziness that was happening in her little side quests. But the through line, also, I continue to think this, the Mickey Holler in this book, and maybe you could argue it's because it's filtered through Bosch's perspective, and even Ballard, because at the very beginning of the book, Bosch's little side quest, Mr. Hieronymus, is meeting up with his best friend Mickey Holler because this man finally has fucking leukemia. He finally is about to be kicking the bucket and has his cancer diagnosis, and he wants to sue the LAPD again. For a man that is always like, he's high and mighty and is like, oh my goodness, the LAPD, it's not even that he thinks that they can do no wrong, but it's just like, I get it, you worked there for 3 decades, like you are indebted to this organization, but at the same time, you've now sued them twice. Like you've seen them repeatedly fuck you over, even when he was inside the department, and he was. This is the problem I have with Hieronymus. Hieronymus does shit where he should be fucked over. Like that man should have been fired a long time ago. But the shit that in the canon of the world that the LAPD were hassling him over is like, this is such small potatoes. Like, it's like when you have an employee at work and you see them fucking around and doing the most outrageous shit, and when they finally get written up, it's because they did something like insignificant. Like, oh, we're supposed to, make sure that the tape is 2 inches and they cut the tape 1.5 inches. Like, if they got a write up for that when you know that they're out here, balls to the wall, wilding every other day, it's like, I don't know if you need to write them up for the tape. Like, thank you for doing something, I guess. But that should be like the least of our worries here. Or like when we're in a rush, you're like, you got a lot going on at your workplace, and you got that one coworker who is like fanning napkins or restocking a straw. Like, thank you for doing that. Or like cutting some lemons. Thank you for, we did need that done. Like, so thank you for that. But also there was far more pressing shit that we actually needed that would have been far more beneficial for us to get done right now. Like, we are bigger fish to fry. So that's him. So he is trying to save the department. So he's trying to meet up with his half-brother, Mickey Holler. And again, Mickey Holler in this world is so more skeezy and slimeball. It's like, it's embarrassing, to be honest with you. In some ways, it does feel more like the Netflix adaptation. But even there's still like a wholesome quality to him. Where it's like, I want to watch you for 4 seasons. The book's very different, we suffer through that together, besties, but it is what it is. So he's meeting up with his half brother to be like, I want to sue the department because even though I have all this money from the last time I sued them, I have that set aside for my daughter. But also, this man is like 60 years old. And it's not to say that 60 is like ancient and we should be, murdering people. But Bosch specifically has led a full life. Anything there is to experience, he's experienced it. So like, but whatever, he's gonna fight the cancer. And we knew he's gonna fight the cancer because we've read the Lincoln Lawyer books and we discussed him getting experimental treatments, doing this and the third. That's why he's meeting up with his brother. But when he's meeting up with them, he's sitting on this case and he sees something hinky. He's like, the investigation don't make no sense here. And so he gets pulled into this murder investigation that winds up clearing Mickey Holler's client, which then, of course, aggravates the LAPD, which is Bosch's real full-time job, if we're being honest here. Also, as a result of the last book that we read, he has been fully kicked off of the San Fernando Reserve people. They haven't taken his badge, and they, not all of his cases have gone to trial. So they're like, we want you to keep the badge, but he is not reporting to duty in San Fernando no more. Because in the last book, when there was an informant to the gang that they were working at the whole case from inside the police unit, and the man got the slip on Bosch and tried to commit suicide in Bosch's office, and then he whacked his head and fell into, I don't think he fell into a coma, but he was out of commission, and it was not a good look that this man, but also it was so fucking silly. And man, also, we got another call back because the little girl in this book committed suicide in the same way that that police officer tried to commit suicide in the last book. But mind you, this man, we had to hear about how rotund he was, and he was going to hang himself by a necktie. And listen, I don't want people to be out here trying to off themselves, fictional or otherwise, but I don't think, and again, that man was under immense pressure because he had just gotten some people killed, and he was, you know, leaking to people he shouldn't have been leaking to. So I understand, like, his back was against the wall. Like, this is what people do in this genre, in this kind of a situation. He's not even the first person in the Harry Bosch universe. He's not even the first cop we've had to see commit suicide. But it's just like, I don't think you thought this one through. Like, what you attempted to do, and he didn't have any other options because he had left his weapon across the street in his office because Bosch's office was in the decommissioned jail cell. It's a whole thing. So it's just like, he's not working there no more. He has nothing to do. So he's like, I'm going to investigate your case, Mickey Holler. I'm going to get to the real killer in this situation. But the actual plot that we're actually, not the actual plot, but the A plot, the main mystery that we're trying to solve is Bosch's, one of his detective mentors. So when he went from being a beat cop to being a detective, the first guy he worked with, he had recently passed away. So you see him go to the funeral. He's consoling the widower. And no, widow, not widower, consoling the widow. And she's like, oh yeah, this murder book he left in his office. And so she gives him the murder book, and Bosch gives the murder book to Ballard because Ballard is actually a cop and she can actually use police resources. Although she was so fucking reckless in this. She was out here like getting people to sign documents to get fucking warrants, that it was crazy. It was crazy what she was doing in this case. But it was this murder of this white man, and they didn't know what happened to him. I think his body was left in an alley in Crip territory, and they're like, this is weird. Like, what is happening to this little white boy in Crip territory? Why would this happen? And eventually it comes out that the white boy had been in lockup with one of the person who ran the alley, the one that was in charge of all the drug dealers in the alley. They had been locked up together, and they had been prison husbands. But when they came out of prison, that little white boy wouldn't leave good enough alone, and he kept trying to hook back up with his prison husband. And the prison husband was like, I can't do that. You know, that was for the inside. We outside now. So what was inside stayed inside, what is outside stayed outside. But that man wouldn't, he couldn't get it through his skull. And so he got murdered because of that. And then as a result of that, now that gangbanger, he's out of the game. He has like a construction company out in the suburbs, and he's living his best life out in the suburbs because it's been like 10, 15, 20 years since all this. Well, actually, no, if Bosch was a rookie, it's been a long ass time. But it's been all those years later, and he's just, you know, he's big chilling. And as a result of that, a lot of chaos happens. Again, there's wiretappings, there is prison hits because somebody one of the people on the inside is one of the people that was letting people know on the outside. So now they're trying to get this man murdered inside the jail. There's a lot that has to go down. And then as a result of the Mickey Holler case at the beginning, trying to get to the bottom of who that real killer was, we got fucking hired assassins and shit. Michael Connelly, I don't know where he be getting these ideas. But the ideas do be hitting. For a brief second there, I did think that the hired assassin was Cassie from Void Moon, because it just was lining up with so much of what was happening in Void Moon. But I was like, no, her other only appearance is supposed to be in the Narrows, according to the Michael Connelly website. So I know it's not her, but it's just like, damn, it would be really nice. And Cassie's not a murderer. She's a thief. She doesn't murder people. I was just like, damn, this would have been real nice to see you again, Cassie. But overall, it was a good time. The one quibble that I have with this is, so because it's a Ballard and Bosch novel, we are doing a little bit something different with the audiobook for this one. So we still have Titus Welliver, and then the Ballard portions are narrated by the person they established as her narrator in The Late Show. But sometimes, and it's maybe if I was reading along in the physical book, I could see it, but sometimes you get jump scared with a duet narration, and that is weird to me. To me, duet narration is like a romance thing in my mind. I know it's not. I know clearly it's not, because they're doing it over here in, you know, dad fiction. But to me, it's just like there is no romantic undercurrent between Ballard and Bosch. Like, that's just not what that is. It's so platonic. It could only ever be that way. Again, they share a brain cell. You can't be romantic with somebody you share a brain cell with. And so there are times when I'm reading the book and then it jumps to a duet narration. I'm like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. It takes, I won't say it takes me out of it, but it's like, oh, this is weird. This is different. So that's what that is. I did start Fair Warning, which is the next published Michael Connelly book. This is a Jack McAvoy novel, and it's the last of his novels before. I wonder if he is, I don't think he's going to be like a mainstay in the Mickey Holler books going forward. I think they just work together on this one case in the Proving Ground. But to my knowledge, this is his last appearance before showing back up in the Proving Ground. And I think what's so painful about this is like the Jack McAvoy books twice now. So in in The Scarecrow, I guess he did team up with Rachel Walling, who was also in LA. But it's like, I'm reading Fair Warning, and I know he's not going to link up with Ballard or Bosch, which is kind of a, like, what is happening here? But he is being investigated because one of his hookups was killed. But because I did read The Proving Ground, I know that Fair Warning is about a serial killer who was using like a 23andMe Ancestry.com to find his victims. Craziness. So he's out here doing the independent journalist thing at this small little startup operating out of a fucking strip mall. That's what Jack McAvoy is doing with his 2 New York Times bestsellers under his belt. You know, I guess it's about time. You know, every 10 years he gets a new serial killer to write about. So it's that time again for him. And so that's what I'm going to read. I'm reading Fair Warning right now. As for what I'm trying to do right at this very moment, after I get done talking to you guys, I'm going to run some morning errands or some groceries I need to pick up. I think I need to get some new car fresheners for my car, so I'm probably going to go to Bath & Body Works for that. Even though I could just get it at the grocery store. I'm probably not going to. And then I'm probably going to go to the car wash because my car looks a little bit sad on the outside. A little bit sad. So we're going to spray this off before it gets frigid again. But other than that, I don't think I have anything necessarily to say. So I'll be back tonight. I don't plan on finishing Fair Warning today. I'm probably going to finish it sometime tomorrow. And that's just what it's going to be. So, like I said this morning, I was going to attempt to read some more of Fair Warning. And besties, in my head, when I said I was going to do that, I definitely had this understanding that I was going to be like walking around the stores, doing my grocery shopping, running my errands, listening to this book, and that really didn't happen between you and I. I don't think I listened to Fair Warning at a single store that I went to today at all. Just a completely, laying it all out there. I did manage to listen to Fair Warning, some of it. I'm at 41% now. And the Jack McAvoy books continue to be interesting. They continue to be, there is a duo that we are chasing, and Jack McAvoy continues to be in a position where he is like reinventing himself. When we first met him in The Poet, for the girlies that weren't there when I was, spoiling that book for people, he was a reporter at a Denver newspaper, and his brother was working a case, and his brother was murdered. It was made to look like a suicide. And then over the course of the novel, we found out that there was actually 2 serial killers on the loose. One serial killer was targeting young people and was definitely high-key a pedophile, or was in business with pedophiles. It was complicated. It was complicated, but it was weird. It was weird and it was complicated. So I was one of the killers. And then as the story went on, we also learned that there was a secondary killer that was following behind the pedophile, that was aware of the pedophile, and was killing the law enforcement officers who were investigating this person. And so Jack McAvoy was able to put together that there was this. He actually only put together that there was the one serial killer, the serial killer of the agents, of the police officers. And then as the story went on, he was like, oh my goodness, there's actually 2 serial killers. But at the time that he was coming up with the initial theory, he was like, 2 serial killers is unserious. Like, there's no way. There's no way that there's 2 serial killers on the loose. And then there was, in fact, 2 serial killers on the loose. It was during that investigation that we were introduced to Rachel Walling, I'm pretty sure. She might have made an appearance in an earlier Bosch book, but I think she made an appearance in a Bosch book before I read the poet because the poet was not available for my library. It was one of those I had to circle back and purchase for myself. So that was the poet. He and Rachel Walling get into a relationship that's complicated because she is the, FBI presence on the case, and he is a reporter who managed to tag along with them. Then we skip forward like a decade or so, like maybe 5 or 6 years, the better part of a decade maybe, and we are following the Scarecrow. And Jack McAvoy has now left Denver. He has written one published book about his time on the poet. His book on the poet actually is a book that exists within the larger Hieronymus universe. We see characters reading it and mentioning it, at least one time for sure. And then we have the Scarecrow, which was a murderer who was killing people because they were linked to the server farm that he was running. It was like the older days of the internet. And so you weren't, going on square.com, wix.com to get your business website up and running. It was this private server farm, and he and a partner were killing people that were associated through the server farm. Like their businesses were on the server. And so it was like this duo that was doing that. Once again, Rachel Walling got brought in. This time, she too was stationed in Los Angeles, and she and Jack McAvoy were kind of having a strained relationship. And here we are again now for the third time, fair warning. Jack McAvoy is still in Los Angeles, still down on his luck, but now he's written two best-selling two best-selling nonfiction books. Obviously, his first book on the poet and his second book on the Scarecrow. He is once again finding himself at a dead-end job in journalism. Now he is, doing consumer protection, like trying to get people not to get scammed. That's the kind of journalism he's in these days after being on the crime beat for the better part of 2 decades. He's now doing that. Also, in the last book, like his soon-to-be replacement was definitely brutally murdered because he was working at the Times at the time, and he had been let go, and he was supposed to be training his replacement. And then because he was on to the murderers murdered this girl who was supposed to take over his job in an attempt to frame him. So I'm starting to think that the Jack McAvoy books are, I won't say the most repetitive, but it's like, we have definitely been down this road before. Michael Connelly, what are we doing? So once again, Jack McAvoy is no longer living high on the hog from the success of his books. He's trying to figure out what he's going to do with his life, and he and Rachel Walling have once again had a falling out. At the end of The Scarecrow is pretty much in the middle of The Scarecrow, she gets fired, and then she gets let back onto the job. And so I guess at some point between the end of The Scarecrow and the beginning of this book, she is let go due to another investigation that we don't see, that just happens off of the pages. It's not even like something that gets really, I would argue, mentioned in the larger Bosch universe, but maybe I just wasn't paying close enough attention. So he's working on this. There's another duo out there, and like I said yesterday, it is these people who are linked to a DNA testing facility like a 23andMe who are responsible for the killings. Now, I will say this, that the duo that we are following, that we're getting the perspective of, does seem to be not the murderers this time. And the last 2 times, we've gotten perspectives in the Jack McAvoy books from the perspective of the killer, which I don't want to say like robs the story of any tension, because I think that Michael Connelly is a good author and is able to tell a story, even though we have a sort of a baseline understanding of the operational world of our murderers. But in this one, I don't know. There's something about it that just isn't. It's not hitting the same. It's not really doing what I need it to do. And maybe that's just because The Nightfire was so good. And even The Law of Innocence, which is the book that is published after this, was also really good. That right now we're just like spinning our wheels. But we are at the 41% point. And we are in a position where Jack McAvoy, he's been hassled by the police because he knew one of the victims. He's been able to, once again, piece together that there's probably a serial killer on the loose, because the victim that he's been connected to she died by having her skull like detached from her spine, but her neck was not severed. Like it was an internal decapitation. And he's found 4 other people who have a similar manner of death. And obviously this is like not, something common. It's a pretty uncommon way to die, to have your head ripped from your body, but not actually ripped from your body. And so he's thinking that these all are connected somehow. And so at the 41% point, he's finally at the point where he is working I don't want to say against the police, but he's racing against time to kind of put everything together before the police, because now the police have embarrassed him. They've arrested him on trumped up charges. They've tried to slander his good name. And he's like, I'm going to solve the case before you just to spite you, and you're all look fucking stupid. So far, so good. Like, I'm enjoying where I'm at, but it's not anything special, I guess. So once again, Michael Connelly has found a formula for one of his characters, and it worked out really great for me in the first couple of books. But now it's just kind of like, okay, let's see where we're gonna go from here. And again, the latter half of a Michael Connelly book is probably the better half. Typically speaking, like, things really do be coming together. Like I said this morning, the Nightfire had so many subplots happening in tandem with what was, the shining beacon at the center of the story, that, like, I have faith that Fair Warning is going to come together into a story that I respect and I'm happy to have read. But right now, just like, let's speed it up a little, maybe. So those are my thoughts on Fair Warning and The Nightfire. I'll be back again tomorrow night to discuss at least my final thoughts on Fair Warning, and I might pick up something that isn't a Michael Connelly, but until we get to that bridge, we're not gonna cross it. So I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Stay safe, stay hydrated, and until next time, bye.